You might have come across some of these looks before and wonder what their purpose actually is. Why are fashion houses creating them? Who is buying and wearing them? Recently, I had the opportunity to attend a few shows during Couture Fashion Week in Paris, and I was thinking that sometimes couture collections can feel very distant to us, as opposed to the ones we see at the ready-to-wear fashion shows. So I wanted to make these videos to explore a bit what couture actually is, whether it is still relevant today, and how it fits into our social reality. In very simple terms, haute couture today is probably the most exclusive sector of fashion. To qualify as a couture house, brands must create made-to-measure garments, hand-sewn by skilled artisans, with a dedicated atelier in Paris which employs at least 20 specialized workers. In addition, each collection shown twice a year must include 50 original looks. These requirements are protected by the French Fashion Federation, which during Couture Fashion Week also invites guest designers to showcase in order to diversify and create a platform for these brands. Haute couture began in the mid-19th century with Charles Frederick Worth, who is often credited as the first designer to sign his garments and present them in seasonal collections. By the 1950s, with the rise in industrial production and changing lifestyle, mass-produced garments became more accessible and popular. And the 1960s is when luxury ready-to-wear became popular as we know it today through designers like Yves Saint Laurent, who bridged the gap between luxury and mass-produced garments. If your first thought was that couture is only for rich people or celebrities, then you are mostly right. While not many of us can pay up to £1 million for a wedding dress, there are about 4,000 couture clients in the world who can do that. One of them, for example, is Lara Cosima, a socialite, social media influencer, and member of an Austro-Hungarian noble family. She often posts behind the scenes from couture fittings, get ready with me videos for parties and balls, and even attended and walked for brands during Couture Fashion Week last year. She also opened the 2023 Debutante Ball in Paris, a modern version of the traditional ball when girls from eligible families would come out in society. And looking at these debutantes, we can see who more of these couture clients are. For example, in 2024, these included children of celebrities, royals, tech billionaires, or artists. Another segment that couture is addressed to is celebrities, for normal red carpet events or most notably for the Met Gala. However, they are not usually paying for these outfits, with designers loaning them looks for exposure. Seeing as it's made for such a narrow part of society, you might ask, how is couture still relevant in 2025? And sure, if you see it as excessive on unwearable clothing, it can feel quite removed from most of us. But I think its essence lies in its power to change our perception about fashion and clothing in general. Extremely fast fashion and online trend cycles have made it so accessible for us to have everything we see and want all the time. Hauls, dupes, TikTok comments asking creators where every piece of their clothing is from. All of these highlight our general perception of fashion as only something to consume and dispose of. In addition, because of its place between practicality and aesthetic, fashion is sometimes still seen as a shallow pursuit. So when people see something like couture that is neither accessible nor practical, it can trigger very negative reactions. For example, surrealist designs are often ridiculed and used as an example to highlight how much society has fallen, with the Met Gala or Couture Fashion Week often being compared to the Hunger Games. I know that the statement "fashion is art" can be a bit overused and somewhat cliché, but I want to highlight exactly the ways in which couture is much more closer to art than to consumable fashion. Without the pressure to create commercially viable collections, designers use couture as a way to make sense of the world around them, and to also trigger emotion and self-reflection in those that engage with it. The two shows I attended this season, Gaurav Gupta and Yuima Nakazato, were both inspired by deeply personal journeys of the designer, but they managed to translate them into a universal feeling that allowed me to reflect in a personal way. Gaurav Gupta's show focused on resilience in the face of traumatic events. Last year, his atelier caught fire, and both him and his partner were severely injured. She actually opened the show in a sheer dress that highlighted her scars, while reciting a poem about her experience, setting an emotional but hopeful tone for the show. The show then opened with dark structured gowns, accentuated with metallic gold and cosmic symbols, evoking mythical guardians watching over his journey. The twin flame dress, a deep orange silk draped around two identical models, represented an unbreakable bond between the two forged through suffering. Even the invite for the show had a purpose. It came with a meditation bowl, which is something that helped them in their healing journey, but also something that the receiver can use to reflect upon. At the same time, Yuima Nakazato used his collection to reflect on time, change, and the fragility of civilization. Drawing from the mythical Namazu, a giant catfish believed to cause earthquakes, he explored how shifting environments might reshape the future, and what legacy do we leave for those that will come after us. His collection featured open-work crochet designs crafted from colored threads and metal chains, alongside sculptural ceramic jewelry evoking eroded rock. While as a critic, I first marveled at the complex and avant-garde construction, as a human I soon found myself pondering the philosophical meaning of the spectacle before me, said critic Jessie Scott in Rain magazine. The show's centerpiece was a dress of over 2,000 bronze ceramic squares assembled by hand over 1,000 hours, revealed as the designer himself unearthed it from a sand pile on stage and assembled it on the model, as a parallel to how today's garments might be unearthed in the distant future. I wanted to use these examples to highlight how important context is when understanding and appreciating couture as a form of art. Just how you probably wouldn't judge a painting or a sculpture by its practicality, I think we should do the same with couture. That doesn't mean you need to like every single piece of couture you see out there, but it's just the metric that we think of it, as opposed to ready-to-wear collections. It's also important because it challenges our perception of fashion and clothing as something we can always access and consume whenever we want to, which is key if we want to embrace a truly sustainable future. And finally, it changes our bias of social media and art. Just because a celebrity wears it or it becomes viral on social media, it doesn't make it any less valuable.